Welcome to Seeking Numina, the Sacred Places podcast. I'm your host, Elise Wells, and today I am joined by Philip Carr-Gomm to discuss Druidry, and in our second part of this episode, to discuss Sussex, a very sacred place for the Druids. Philip Carr-Gomm is a psychologist, author, and spiritual teacher who bridges ancient Druid wisdom with modern psychology. A former chosen chief of the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, he helped bring Druidry into global awareness through a lifelong devotion to Druidry. He's written over 20 books on spirituality, nature connection, and personal transformation, including The Long Man and Friends, Sacred Sussex, and Sacred Places, Sites of Spiritual Pilgrimage. Today, he continues to teach and write from his home in Sussex, England. Learn more about OBOD at druidry.org and Philip's work at philipcar-gomm.com, and you can find those links in the show notes. Welcome to Seeking Numina. I'm your host, Elise Wells, and I invite you to connect with the sacred wild within and around you through Numina, or sacred sites around the world, and the wisdom they hold. Together, let's remember the old ways, build relationships with land spirits, and dare to reach out to the fairies. The sacred wild is inviting you to dance in the moonlight. Will you answer their call? Thank you so much for being here today, Philip.
Oh, no, I'm very happy to be here. Pleasure.
Your work has been very inspiring to me, and I know also a lot of our listeners. We have listeners from all paths, all walks of life. Your work speaks to that. It speaks to the importance of recognizing the power that is in everybody's paths and the syncretisms and the commonalities that we find, particularly with place, with land. As soon as I saw the Long Man and Friends release, I knew we had to have you on to talk about Sussex. But we're going to do this as a two-parter. So anybody, if you're catching this as the first part, you've got a second part to watch. I think they'll be great to watch in any order, to discuss Druidry as well as a practice of connection to sacred place. So let's start with Druidry. Why is working with the land so important in a Druid practice?
Well, if we all go back to our childhoods and you remember the kind of importance of where you found yourself, that gradually kind of growing awareness, when you're a little baby, it's just kind of very close at hand. But gradually, as you grow up, you become incredibly sensitive to your surroundings, don't you? And I remember when I was a kid, we lived in London, we lived in Notting Hill Gate, and I was born just 7 years after the Second World War ended, so there were lots of bomb sites in London. So London was kind of scarred in some way by that. And there were rationing cards still being used, for the food, and then gradually things improved. And I used to we used to go out into the park, or to Richmond Park, which is a beautiful park on the side of London, beautiful old oak trees. And I always, from an early age, I was always so thrilled to be with these big old oak trees and to see the kind of vistas across the landscape. I think it's really, yeah, I forgot what your question was, but I think it's really natural, that it plays such an important part of our identity. I suppose that's what I was trying to say, a really important part of our identity, and is so supportive and nourishing, and also all sorts of other things as well. It can be scary and difficult and all the rest of it. But and so Druidry, I think, recognizes that. And it recognizes that we're beings who are kind of born into time and place. My sense is that, beyond this world, we're in a kind of time is very different, space is very different. But when you're incarnated into a kind of baby's body, you are existing for this lifetime in the worlds of time and space. And so time is really significant, the passing of the seasons. So in Druidry, you have these 8 special times during the year where you celebrate the festivals. And space is really important, the land around you and how you relate to it.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's calling so many people home now. I myself am a member of the order. I'm in the Bardic grade. And a lot of my friends, my training really comes from witchcraft. And then it sort of became a deeper bridge into my Greek nationality that I felt kind of separate from as a kid. And then it was really spending time in the land in Greece that gave me that identity back as I aged and spent more time in Europe and lived in Greece full time. And I think in our modern world, we're often pulled quite drastically out of the places we want to be,
Mm.
whether that's because the place around us grows and changes in ways out of our control, or it's because work, life, school takes us to these far distances that, we don't necessarily want to do. And people live very unrooted because of that. And then you scaffold on top of that the technology that takes us away and indoors and in the quiet. And I think it's really noble that so many people are seeking to connect to land now because it's very difficult. It's not supported by our greater society. And that's why it's so important.
I'd say it's important, exactly. And if you look at the kind of epidemic of loneliness which exists
Yeah.
now, which some people are trying to address by developing AI friends, there's a whole industry of that. But other people realize that won't fix the problem because it's not only loneliness in terms of people's social interactions and social relationships that's been disturbed, but it's also a loneliness in the sense that we don't feel at home in the land where we are, but our physical location. Because when you feel completely at home in your physical life, loneliness isn't an issue because you may be on your own at the particular time, but it's your land around you. You feel connected.
Yeah. In Druidry, there's a practice that I learned early on of calling the Awen.
Hmm.
What can you tell our listeners, for those who are unfamiliar, what the Awen is, and how does calling to the Awen start to ignite our connection to place?
So you may have experienced already that experience of what some psychologists call flow. It's when you're in a particular state and you're inspired really, and you find yourself writing, speaking, talking, painting, whatever it is you're doing. It's like you've got out of your own way and it's just flowing through you. And a very common experience, if you watch those kind of documentaries by, famous pop stars or whatever, musicians, they'll say things like, "Oh, that song wrote itself." I woke up one morning and the lyrics just came through, and I just read. I didn't really write it, and I've heard Paul McCartney saying that. I've heard the Bee Gees talking about that, on documentaries, and so it's quite a common experience. Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, wrote a great
Big
book called
magic.
Big Magic. Yeah, she
Yes.
talks about this phenomenon. It's a great book, actually. And this is essentially what we're talking about. And in Druidry, the interesting thing about Druidry is it's kind of that concept or principle is enshrined right at the heart of it as Awen, the breath of inspiration, the blessing of the gods, the breath of the gods. This idea that it comes from beyond you and flows through you. The first step is just understanding that, because when you understand it fully, it's incredibly liberating. Because most people spend their time kind of struggling to fully express all of their potential. If you talk to people, they'll say, if only I could just fulfill, express all of my potential, then my life would be worthwhile. Then I would have really achieved what I wanted to achieve, and so on and so on and so on. And the message of Druidry is stop it. You can't. You can't do that. And you say, why not? That's outrageous. Why not? You say, because for a start, you say you want to express all of your potential. It's not yours. It comes from beyond you. It comes ultimately from the source, from the divine. Sometimes Druids depict it as the muse, the goddess, and and it comes from her cauldron, these drops of elixir from a cauldron. So for a start, it's not yours. And secondly, if you say you want to express all of your potential, you're making it a finite quantity, as if
Mhm.
you could finally get it all out and then you'd have done your job. Well, it's limitless. It's like a spring. It's like a well that just pours out. And once you connect to it, it's not finite and it's not limited. So you can never express all of your potential for those reasons. And when people get it, it's incredibly liberating because then they can just kind of open up and let it flow. And then you say, and then you were talking about, why the Druids call upon it. What's the, that's why you call upon it. You kind of open yourself up. There are techniques in meditation and exercises and so on. And just the whole stress of Druidry is designed to help you encourage that flow in your life, And then life starts to flow more freely for you. You find yourself able to express yourself more clearly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully you find your life is more inspired. Yeah.
It is, yeah. I think that's something big magic was where I first saw it put on text that ideas are sentient, really, and they come and find us. And I found that book probably 5 years before I started my OBOD training,
Mm,
and it was right there. It was all part of it. But in the middle of all that, I also was living in Greece and researching what the idea was to the ancient Greeks because they had the same animist principle applied to ideas, to inspiration, and the Latin word the Romans called this the genius. And it's
mm,
it's fun to me to think about that because we do have it in English a little bit where we'll say things like, "Oh, the idea just came to me."
mm,
But when we really can recognize, instead of saying, I'm a genius,
mm.
saying, oh, my genius is this book, that, it kind of becomes a thing we've channeled and it's co-creation. I think that's at the core of working with any land-based practice, earth-based practice, is recognizing reciprocity and co-creation, removing transaction from it. We have an ancient Greek virtue for this, charis, which is the reciprocity of relationship with deity. We don't leave an offering because we're getting something. We leave the offering, and if the deity guides us, aids us, same for our land. It supports us. It has the same best interests at heart that we have for protection, and we co-create that together.
Exactly. And you've pointed to the kind of, a kind of deepening of the concept, because you talk about Awen as being not you and beyond you and the flow and all the rest of it. But of course, that's not to say that you're not important, and that you can be as stupid as hell, but just as long as you can open the floodgates, works of genius can pour forth. It's not
The
true.
monkeys and
You,
Shakespeare, right?
yeah, yeah, that's right. It's like it is a co-creation, and although the kind of the source is conceived of as being beyond you, it's the relationship between that beyond and the source and the divine and the infinite and all this inspiration and the uniqueness of you as a person and all your, for instance, if you're a writer, it's all the kind of vocabulary that you have and the reading that you've done and your knowledge and so on. So it's a co-creation, which makes it really magical because then you have a part to play in all this. It's just it's just maybe not the part you thought you had. It's just slightly different. Yeah.
Yeah, the idea chooses you for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
what I really push on to people who have this great idea, this great concept. I'm a writer as well. I'm much newer in my career than you are, but I've written now two books. I have Sacred Wild, an invitation to connect to spirits of the land, coming out with Llewellyn on November 8th.
Oh, great.
And I think it'll be out by the time this episode releases.
Hmm.
And as I was writing that book and researching that book, I was asking people, about their experience with the land. Like, what do you struggle with? Like, with your, because I think of this as kind of a starter book for people who want to connect to land
Hmm.
around them on travels. For most people, it's why me? Why would the
Hmm.
land want to talk to me? What makes me somebody the land gets anything out of this relationship? So
Hmm.
how would you answer that if somebody said, oh, I love this, I believe in it, I know the Awen flows, but I don't think it would choose me, or it would, why would the land want to listen to me?
Well, last night I was at this incredible presentation by Merlin Sheldrake, who's written
Oh
a book
yeah.
called Entangled Life, and he's a mycologist, he's a mushroom expert, and he was an amazing presentation where he was showing us the complexity of the mycelium and the world of mushrooms and so on. It's when you realize that you're part of a whole that you can come to the paradox that on the one hand, you're just a tiny cog in the machine, if you like. Machine's the wrong word, of course. You're a tiny part of this organism of being, which is called life. So you're tiny, tiny, tiny. But you're also integral, and the whole, like a fractal, is manifested and reflected through you as an integral part. Every part of the system is as important as every other part of the system. He was illustrating to us this idea in so many different ways with sort of beautiful imagery and music and so on. So I think that's the answer is to hold it. Well, on the one hand, you're not important. None of us are important in the great scheme of things. But on the other hand, we are it's supremely important because we are, the divine in life, and so and that ability to hold paradox, because the rational mind says, well, one's got to be true and the other's got to be false by definition. So you can't say that to me, you know. But the fact is that somehow I believe that's where the truth lies, you know. So that which is why, and I've seen this truth in my own life as an experience. So when I started training as a psychotherapist, one of the big things you learn is to get out of the way when you're with a client, but also to be completely present. And that's paradoxical because if I've got out of the way, how can I be present? Surely I cannot be no, 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 no. It's like if you can be completely with your client, totally attentive to them, really listening to them, completely present to the moment and responsive and fully you, but you've got out of the way. And that's what makes psychotherapy different to sitting around a kitchen table talking about your troubles with your friend. Because your friend will want to will want to help you and solve your problems and will have their own opinions and whereas the therapist will just be kind of completely open and really present to the moment and what your soul needs and so on. So that and then I trained in child therapy, trained in child therapy, and it was the same thing. And then I trained in Montessori education as our little
Mm.
girls got bigger, and I wanted them to go to a really nice school, and we couldn't find one, so we thought, well, we'll make one. Montessori taught the same thing: is that teachers need to get out of the way, but be fully present to the kids, and so that paradoxical uh, capacity to be both fully present and aware that your life really is valuable and important, and yet in another sense it's not, and you just need to get out of the way.
I think paradox is in the most cerebral sense. I think it's really what we come to Earth to experience because we
Mm,
have on this planet the most egregious sufferings, the most horrific brutalities. They happen in nature, they happen in the human race, but we
mm.
also have breathtaking beauty, unbelievable
Yeah.
goodness. I mean, it is truly the extremes on this planet. And we also
Mm,
have paradox after paradox. We always have the importance of our mind, but it also can be our biggest hindrance. We have the same for our bodies, we have this Venn diagram really of body, mind, and spirit, and we're always trying to figure out, should I stay in the middle? Is today a day I need this? And maybe this hour it's more body, maybe this is more, and it's understanding how it is going to be all of them and sometimes none of them, and experiencing that
yeah.
paradox is unique to Earth, I think. I don't think we get to do that when we return to source. Things are really good up there.
Yeah, yeah. Let's hope so. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So on the reflection of Druidry as a practice and engaging in land, if there was one thing you could say to somebody who wants to know why should I connect to land? Like what would be their biggest benefit in their life to reaching to land? Or a hierarchy of a few few
Yeah,
benefits.
yeah. During the COVID epidemic, there was a famous explorer here in the UK called Robin Hanbury Tennyson, whose son Merlin is also called Merlin, funnily enough, who I interviewed for this Magical Life podcast because his son Merlin is involved in a restoring British rainforest project, which is fantastic.
Wow.
Um, but so his dad, Robin, was in his 90s and he got COVID and he was intubated and everybody expected him to die because it's like, but he was at some point they brought him out into this hospital that he was in happened to have a garden and they brought him out into the garden and he recovered and I remember seeing him on television saying, this frail old guy saying, my life was saved by the land, by being out on the land in the garden. And he started a project to raise money so that every hospital in the UK has a healing garden. Fantastic idea. And funnily enough, his son was in the army. He was in Afghanistan, and he was blown up in a tank. He drove a tank over a mine. The whole thing exploded, and he suffered from. He was okay physically, but he was kind of injured somewhat, but he was okay. He ended up working in London. He had PTSD, so he was messed up really seriously psychologically. And he healed himself by going back to his family's land in the west of England. And they had this little pocket of rainforest. And he just lay on the ground every day for weeks and healed himself. And he found it so beneficial that he started a program of working with US Army veterans, funnily enough, stationed in the UK, and people in the US Army had PTSD and all that. So he runs these programs, and he's trying to restore the British rainforest. So there's something, and I know that not everybody is lucky enough to have access to the ground where they can lie on reasonably, but luckily we have a garden here. And if I'm feeling a little weak or a little tired or a little under the weather or something like that, I just go out and lie on the ground and just keep letting go. Just keep letting go and just keep relaxing, you kind of detect some slight little tension somewhere, and you think and you release all those muscles, and then you detect kind of deeper down there's another kind of bit of tension. You let that go, and just allow all the cells in your body, your kind of force field, your energy field, to kind of soak up all the energy. You just know that it's doing you good.
Yeah, I say that to people too. Like, the land can take it. It will never be, we have that concern with our friends and family, like, oh, I don't want to be a burden if I keep ruminating on this thing and complaining about it. And I don't want to be a negative Nelly. And that's never a concern with the land. The land, there is nothing a human experiences that is going to be too hard on the land to process. It will transmute that. It will take it and ground it, and you don't need to keep it. The land can always take it.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that is probably the best benefit and that's the oneness, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah. 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 And then you get that paradoxical experience of, on the one hand, letting go of yourself, because you can just merge. If you kind of get familiar with that practice, what happens is that you kind of cease to exist at some level. You sort of merge into the land. You just let go and let go and let go. And it's kind of deeply related to your somatic awareness. So your body, if you relax all your muscles, relax and relax. So you're not holding on to anything of like, who this is me and this is not me. You just relax into the not me of the land. Strangely enough, what happens is you start to feel more yourself. You're feeling yourself again, rather than out of sorts and not, out of connection with your deep self.
Yeah, powerful. It's powerful. It's simple and powerful. And that's what I think we need the mind to step back a little bit sometimes with land connection and just be as a spirit with land.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you for joining me to talk about Druidry. We will be back for part 2 to talk about Sacred Sussex, a space in England that is riddled with sacred places. So we're gonna dive into those. So join us over there, everybody. Thank you for seeking Numina with me today. Join me at patreon.com/Elise Wells to support this show and get access to a library of rituals, exclusive videos, meditations, and more. To learn more about my upcoming retreats, book a tarot reading, or learn with me in workshops, classes, or mentorship, visit seekingnumina.com.